former Chief Executive Officer of Unilever. The theme for this session is a net positive future, building sustainable businesses. We are living in a world where it is increasingly felt that business growth and preservation of environment social impact are not mutually exclusive objectives. Companies can make financial gains and at the same time bring about a positive impact on the society. There is a need for concerted action by all stakeholders, and companies need to act in a collaborative manner to address the impending concerns. In future, only purpose-driven businesses will be able to survive. The session would attempt to answer important questions as to how company leaders can more effectively on the sustainability agenda, how they can get past the initial inertia, and what could be the role of public-private partnerships in the future, and how to inculcate corporate transparency. Ladies and gentlemen, with these words, I would like to request Mr. Sanjeev Mehta, President FICCI, requesting him to kindly make his welcome remarks.
Today, Madam Finance Minister and Chandra alluded to the need for the country to follow the path of sustainability. It couldn't have been more appropriate, and it gives me absolutely great pleasure and honor to welcome an icon of the world of sustainable development, unquestionably the world's leading business thinker for sustainable development, the person that the world looks up to as the voice of leadership, of reason, of commitment for sustainable development, Mr. Paul Pullman, co-founder and chair, Imagine, and the former CEO of Unilever and co-author of Net Positive. As CEO of Unilever from 2009 to 19, Paul demonstrated that business can profit through purpose, marrying a long-term multi-stakeholder model with excellent financial performance. Today, Paul works across a range of organizations and initiatives to help speed the global action needed to regenerate our planet, renew our economies, and unite our societies. Ladies and gentlemen, my key learning from a long association and working closely with Paul is the fact that growth and goodness can go hand in hand, and the business must play an essential part in creating a better, more sustainable and equal world for all us to inhabit, because they are the first ones who will suffer the effects of societies which are dysfunctional. And so please let me say what a source of admiration you are to me, Paul, and for that I wish to thank you. We are in the midst of intensifying planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity and nature loss, and pollution and waste. A crisis that threatens human health, prosperity, equality and peace. A crisis that also threatens the operations of businesses, big and small, across the globe. Clearly, sustainability is at every level in the best interest of the business. As we stand at the threshold of the new decade, let us take a moment to pause, reflect and prepare for the journey ahead. The pandemic has pushed businesses to break new ground and reimagine the future, an equitable, sustainable and purposeful one. Backing sustainability is the only sensible way to boost the corporate bottom line and to make everyone's lives better. It is time for leaders to ask themselves if they care about the world's problem, and if they do, how far are they willing to push their companies to help solve them. This is exactly what Paul Pullman in his critically acclaimed book Net Positive delves into. It sets out how to build companies which succeed by fixing the world's problems rather than creating them. To quote Nobel laureate Kofi Annan, our biggest challenge in this new century is to take an idea that seems abstract, sustainable development, and turn it into a reality for all the world's people. It is for us to make sure that it becomes a reality soon. On that note, I welcome Mr. Paul Pullman, whose insights would greatly help us to move effectively on the sustainability agenda. Over to you, Paul, and my sincere thanks for kindly agreeing to address the FICCI members at our annual convention.
Mr. Sanjeev Mehta, President of FICCI and President of South Asia and a member of the Executive Board globally for Unilever. Mr. Sudhakant Panda, President-elect for FICCI and Managing Director of Indian Metals and Ferroalloys. And then finally, Dr. Anish Shah, Vice President FICCI and Managing Director and CEO of Mahindra & Mahindra. And, sorry, don't want to forget, Arun Chawla, Director General of FICCI. I'm Paul Pullman, the former Global CEO of Unilever and author of a new book called Net Positive, How Courageous Companies Thrive by Giving More Than They Take. Well, I was thrilled when my dear friend Sanjeev asked me to address you for this very important event. A great admiration for Sanjeev, both as a dear friend but also an amazing business leader. As a former chair of the Global International Chambers of Commerce, FICCI is also close to my heart. Equally, during my time as CEO of Unilever, I had the opportunity to visit your country extensively and to meet with the current and former leaders in government, in business, and witness firsthand, may I say, the enormous transformation you've helped bring about. You are a strong institution that has actively changed the face of India over its nearly 100 years of existence. Not only have you as FICCA led on many initiatives to drive a more sustainable and equitable growth, it is also starting to be reflected, I believe, in the national policies itself. There's equally full admiration for India and especially Mr. Modi's leadership through uncertain times, both nationally and increasingly at the global stage as well. Well, every decade has its story, its strengths, and big events. We're 2 years in our current decade, and some of these stories are starting to emerge clearly. A big one is instability and the interlinked nature of the crisis we face. The words of the year that describe this best are polycrisis and permacrisis. A polycrisis is where a number of depressing factors have combined to create one big alarming super situation. And a permacrisis is an extended period of instability and insecurity. I think we can all see that the period of relative geopolitical calm is over, at least for now. I do hope, though, that as Prime Minister Modi recently wrote in the Telegraph newspaper, that our era need not be one of war. By now, the conflict in Ukraine, unfortunately, has displaced millions of people and sent a shockwave through the global economy and shows no sign of ending. India, as an increasingly important member of our global community, is not excluded from that. You saw pickup in inflation, reduced exports, and higher level of import costs. These are just some of the indicators. COVID, we know, is not over either. The direct result of the destruction of our biodiversity. It should not have been a black swan event. We had SARS, Zika, Ebola, Asian flu, and yes, there are most likely a few more waiting around the corner. And climate change is definitely with us. India, again, not excluded. Devastating floods, droughts, erratic monsoons, sea level rises. And it's moving faster, unfortunately, than we are, and so are its costs. Globally, inequality is equally on the rise. Extremism is on the rise. Nationalism is on the rise. All while trust is in decline. On many issues, I have to say, in many places across the world, unfortunately, our politics is stuck. The shape and pattern of international trade are also changing rapidly. And the effect of it all is uncertainty and upheaval, which threatens our common values and, I believe, our shared future. And that makes it harder to do good business and build the thriving companies that we all aspire to lead. Now that is one story, and it might not be a very happy one to many. But there is another story too that is happening at the same time. A different story. A story of growth, a story of innovation, of ambition, of opportunity, of investments, of renewal, of pride, of jobs. And that's the Indian story. Where I'm sitting, you can't go more than a few days without reading an article telling you that this is the decade of India. The world is in awe of what you are achieving in this highly unpredictable environment. Soon, you'll be the world's third largest economy. Your GDP per capita is expected to more than double by 2031, driving about a fifth of the global growth over that period. We also are encouraged by India's leadership increasingly at the world stage, including the leadership you showed and that you're assuming now is the responsibility of the G20 presidency. I always say that with size comes responsibility. Your government is pushing for more ambitious international commitments to phase down fossil fuel at the COP in Egypt. And although we might not have succeeded in this, your efforts were well noted. So were your recent statements from your Prime Minister calling for an end to Russian aggression in the UK. And indeed, also the reassurance that you give that environmental and sustainable focus will be the priority, both for you at home as well as abroad. And within India, there are many good things happening that are creating the lessons for others. The digitization of your economy, the progress you're making on decarbonizing your energy sector and ramping up your renewables, the strides forward in regenerative agriculture, just to name a few. Just like any big economy, you have your challenges, not least in eradicating poverty and bringing security and dignity to all parts of Indian society. And of course, we all know that nothing can be taken for granted. No nation is immune to the tectonic shifts that are taking place in geopolitics, or in the global economy, or in the changing atmosphere in which we operate. But still, the relative stability in your economy, the growth projections, in spite of everything going on, the management of COVID, the investments in infrastructure, your growing middle class, the continuous steps to make it easier for foreigners to invest, all things that I think will continue to keep you on a path of success, and all things that are not happening by chance. This is a country being led, including by its business leaders, at a time when globally leadership is in too short supply. My question to you is, how are these two stories going to come together? A world in trouble and India going from strength to strength. And more importantly, what role is Indian business in particular going to play in this story? Is it one of being dragged along at slow pace as governments and multilateral institutions collectively struggle to implement the needed changes at pace, often shrinking the pie? Or is it one of actively driving this conversion to a more equitable, inclusive world, thereby growing the pie for all? We all know that not acting is not an option. Deloitte actually puts, just on climate change alone, the price of inaction, staying on business as usual and current trends, it puts the price at $178 trillion extra cost by 2070. Were we, however, to take action and stay close to the 1.5 degrees, which many would say is by all means still possible, we are creating an economic opportunity of $43 trillion to the global economy. We're starting to see very clearly that the cost of inaction is starting to significantly outstrip the cost of action. No wonder, therefore, that leading companies are starting to accelerate change. When there are the bigger challenges, they also provide these enormous opportunities to business to actually lead these transitions. I believe that industry, more than ever, must now support and drive the changes, but more than that, in the absence of governments and multilateral institutions fully functioning, must actually fill that void and actually actively lead that change. Companies that do will be rewarded for it. Companies that don't, I believe, will increasingly be heading to the graveyard of dinosaurs. Of course, governments have a role to play, but they can't do it alone. And they increasingly lack the funding, the innovations, the financial and human resources, and frankly, may I say, in many places, as we've seen, the political will. Yet time is running out. The transition to a stable, clean and inclusive economy that we have a limited time to achieve requires us to all step up to reach these tipping points that drive the scale. And it needs to happen at the speed well beyond the technological revolution and at the scale well beyond the industrial revolution. Some might say that the deadline for action is 2070, but it actually isn't, nor is it 2050 or any of those dates. It is actually 2030. What we do in this decade is going to be decisive if we're going to live longer term or not. Of course it's not easy. Otherwise, other people would have done it before us. But there's simply no alternatives. You have it in your 3 Ps, actually, that you're advocating. Profit, people and planet. All reinforcing each other. In my time at Unilever, as Sanjeev can testify, we continuously ranked number 1 in the world as most sustainable company. Twice as high even as companies like Patagonia. We were consistently voted as the best place to work in the world. And during that time, we did not shy away from satisfying our shareholders either, with nearly a 300% return over the 10-year period. And you can just look at the share price of Hindustan Lever if you want to see the effects in your country alone. I believe that the opportunities now are bigger even than they were then, aided by accelerated technology, signals from the marketplace, changing regulatory frameworks, and frankly, as I mentioned, the higher cost of not acting. This is becoming the business opportunity of the century. Despite what the press or politicians sometimes want us to hear, the forces of change are really starting to converge, in my opinion. More governments are waking up to the climate emergency and setting serious targets and putting policies in place. More investors are actually decarbonating their portfolio and driving money towards this green conversion. More industries have signed up to science-based targets. More coalitions are forming, where CEOs are coming together to deal with the tougher challenges, like the Mission Possible coalition or the First Mover coalition, where hard-to-abate industries like shipping, aviation, cement get together to decarbonize their business models. Not surprisingly, with more evidence every year that companies that score higher on ESG also perform better, we see the pace of change accelerating. And the signals of the marketplace are there. Citizens around the world only want to work for companies that have a deeper purpose, more than just making money, and increasingly want to buy from companies that are part of the solution, not part of the problem. I believe that we've seen more momentum in the last 5 years than in the last 50 years combined. But as I mentioned before, we're still not moving fast enough. And it's in business's clear interest, in my opinion, to make sure that we accelerate. That's why we wrote the book Net Positive, How Courageous Companies Thrive by Giving More Than They Take, to help companies seize these opportunities and bring scale and speed to our collective efforts. In essence, net positive companies thrive by giving more than they take. It's not enough anymore, in my opinion, to run a company that is a little bit less bad or does a little bit less harm through conventional corporate social responsibility. At a time when we already have significantly overshot our planetary boundaries, living well beyond our means, simply being less bad won't cut it anymore. It doesn't help us fix our problems. Young people won't have it. Your children won't forgive you for it, and increasingly, I believe your shareholders are demanding more ambition from all of us. The days we live for now demand that companies that actually actively restore or repair or regenerate our world and our societies are the ones that we need to embrace. And that's the idea behind Net Positive. It's about making profits from solving the world's problems, not creating them. It's about leaving the world in a better place than you actually found it. Taking carbon out of the air, creating more nature and biodiversity in them, replenishing water, creating more equity, advancing science, democracy, and truth. Yes, it is about taking responsibility for your company's total impact in this world, including your indirect impacts across your value chain. It is about serving all of your stakeholders, workers, customers, suppliers, the local community, the planet, even the future generations, in order to build the lasting value over the long term, including for your investors. And it is about setting audacious targets that the world actually needs, not just the ones you can deliver or can get away with. It is about using your power and influence, not to lobby for special favors with your governments, but to give your politicians the confidence that if they are bold, if they find ways to break the political stalemate, business is actually with them. And ultimately, it's about you being the systems thinkers and partnering with others, even sometimes your competitors and your fiercest critics, if I want to drive these more transformative changes. As I said, it's not easy, but increasingly within our reach and badly needed. We have the money, we have the technology, and increasingly we have the economic incentives to move. What we now need is the willpower. Some people say that this is not a crisis of climate change or food security or poverty. These are actually symptoms. Some people would argue that the real crisis is one of greed, of selfishness, of apathy. And so the solution, in my opinion, above all, has to move more towards moral leadership and willpower, towards courage, which actually comes from the Latin word cor, or heart. Gandhi says, if we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. We need not to wait to see what others do. Our world desperately needs more of the right leaders. Leaders that are able to drive the tipping points. Leaders who operate with a higher level of empathy, integrity, and ambition. Leaders who actually can see the bigger picture and who are motivated to putting themselves in the service of others, understanding that by doing so, they're better off themselves as well. After all, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. In Vicky, I believe, we're therefore blessed. Blessed to have all of you. Your willpower and your leadership has already helped build a tremendous society in India, built incredible, iconic companies. And again, you're in the driver's seat of one of the most extraordinary chapters in India's history. You are transforming your nation, and with ambition, your companies, I believe, can play a huge role in transforming the world as well. If not now, when? If not India, who? And to quote the great Mahatma Gandhi once more, very simply, the future depends on what we do today. And thank you very much, and I hope to see you all in the not too distant future. Enjoy it. We're getting together in the meetings. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was indeed an absolute pleasure to hear you, Mr. Paul Coleman, and you have shared some very thought-provoking issues for businesses to wake up to for change, for being more inclusive and sustainable. May I now request Mr. Sanjeev Mehta to kindly make his closing remarks.
Paul Coleman clearly is one of the greatest leaders of our time. And what he talked about in a very simple way, he talked about that the cost of inaction will be greater than the cost of action. He talked about leading from the heart, he talked about courage, he talked about compassion. And he has demonstrated during his long corporate career that you can choose the path of sustainability and still deliver superior financial performance. He's a great believer in the potential of India, in the future of India, and today we couldn't have had a better leader again talk about the greatness or look at it from another lens that our destiny beckons us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mehta. Ladies and gentlemen, as you're aware that we have the much awaited session which is up next with Honorable Minister Shri Nitin J. Gadkari, Honorable Minister for Road Transport and Highways, Government of India. While we await Honorable Minister to join us, we have a short film on the various initiatives by the Ministry of Transport and Road Highways. Can we play the video, please?
There are followers, there are leaders, and then there are visionaries, taking people and society to where they ought to be, rather where they want to be, is what separates a visionary from a mere leader. This rare quality is what sets apart Nitin Gadkari, Honorable Minister of Road Transport and Highways. Born in 1957 into a free-thinking agricultural family, Nitin Gadkari, at heart, has always been a social worker inspired by the RSS founder K.B. Hedgewar's ideals of humanity and nation building. Taking off as a minister in the Public Works Department in 1995, Nitin Gadkari made groundbreaking changes in the Mumbai transportation system. 55 flyovers dotting the city have made commuting in Mumbai much easier than ever before. The foundation for the magnificent Bandra-Worli Sea Link was also readied during this time. The jewel in the crown of Maharashtra's first expressway, the world-class Pune-Mumbai Expressway, is also a futuristic project imagined and brought to fruition by Nitin Gadkari. His outstanding efforts, contributions, and leadership in the construction of highways and infrastructure in Maharashtra earned him a distinct reputation. He is fondly called the flyover man for his added contribution to road connectivity. The then Prime Minister Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee was highly impressed by Gadkariji's work. He offered him the responsibility of weaving a road network in the whole of rural India. Shri Nitin Gadkariji was also appointed the chairman of the acclaimed Swarnim Chaturbuj Yojana, or the Golden Quadrilateral. As India's current Minister of Road Transport and Highways, he has re-energized the whole sector with his clear vision. More than 51,000 kilometers of new national highways are notified, and more than 76,500 kilometers of national highways are constructed in last 8 years. This is a mammoth achievement considering the requirement of huge funds and challenges around land acquisition. A 50% increase in the length of national highways in the last 8 years of the NDA government is a remarkable achievement. In the previous 8 years, the entire budgeted spending has increased 5.5 times, from INR 33,414 crore to INR 1.99 lakh crore. He has conceptualized the flagship Bharat Mala program, under which 27 new greenfield access-controlled highways are being constructed with a capital outlay of 5 lakh crore rupees. Another 20 greenfield highways with total cost of 4 lakh crore rupees are being planned to be constructed in the next phase of Bharat Mala. The road sector has served as a significant investment multiplier for the economy. The most noticeable examples of these endeavors have been signature projects like the new bridge over the mighty Brahmaputra or the east and west peripheral expressways, Narmada Bridge, 6 lanes expressway from Delhi to Meerut. For promoting religious tourism, Mr. Gadkari has started many projects running into lakhs of crores. These include Chardham, Kailash Mansarovar, Palki-Marg, Ramban Gaman Marg, 84 Kosi Parikrama, and Buddha Circuit. As a sensitive and environment-conscious human, he made sure that the development projects in no way led to raising of trees and deforestation. He has proposed a tree bag policy and presented the same to Environment Ministry to bring accountability with regards to the cutting and planting of trees by infrastructure development authorities like NHAI, NHIDCL, Port Authority, Railways and Airport Authority. Introduction of fast tags proved to be a groundbreaking technology introduced by him that enabled faster movement of vehicles. The electronic toll collection program through fast tags helped save fuel and time and enabled seamless movement of traffic. Mr. Gadkari introduced the first ever vehicle scrapping policy, which proved to be a major boost to the fight against pollution. Unprecedented push for research and development in electric vehicles and usage of waste materials in highway construction resulted in cutting down costs and generating wealth out of waste materials. In addition, his department accomplished all of this while setting world records with regards to pace of construction. Some of the notable records are: the rate of highway construction is 37 kilometers per day. The greatest rate ever recorded in history. His ambition is to take it up to 60 kilometers per day. The Akola-Amravati highway, which broke the world record, and the majestic 3.4 kilometer long viaduct on Wardha Road, and constructing 75 kilometer single lane bituminous concrete road in record time of 105 hours and 33 minutes are both the culmination of Shri Nitin Gadkari's innovative ideas. Laying of highest quantity of dense bitumen over road length of 50 km single lane in 100 hours at Delhi-Vadodara Expressway project in state of Gujarat. The initiatives were unprecedented in India and they justify a place in the Guinness Book. A recent world record was set by an Indian construction company when it built a 2.5 kilometer long 4-lane cement concrete road stretch of the Delhi-Mumbai Expressway in Vadodara in under 24 hours. At the Solapur-Bijapur portion of N52, there is a record for constructing a 26 kilometer long single-lane bitumen road in under 21 hours. Similar to Bharatmala, the shipping ministry under Nitin Gadkari has launched Sagarmala Port and Coastal Zone Development Projects. As part of Sagarmala program, more than 800 projects costing over 6 lakh crore rupees have been identified for implementation during 2015-2035. The go-getter Nitin Gadkari took the initiative to build exclusive cruise terminals in 5 major ports: Mumbai, Mormugao, Bangalore, Kochi and Chennai. As a result of his endeavors, India now has its first domestic cruise service between Mumbai and Goa. With Nitin Gadkari taking charge, India's logistics sector is also going through a huge transformation. The inefficient point-to-point model is being shifted to hub-and-spoke model with multimodal connectivity. This multimodal transport system integrates railways, highways, inland waterways and airports, conjuring a highly effective transportation grid, substantially reducing logistic costs and pollution. 35 multimodal logistic parks, 50 economic corridors and 10 intermodal stations are being ready for the monumental effort. Logistics summits with international participants including government organizations and the World Bank have resulted in signing 34 MOUs worth 2 lakh crore rupees. The single point objective is to bring logistics costs to GDP at single digit from current 14%. Among his other endeavors, unprecedented progress is evident in port industrialization, national water highway traffic, jetties for coastal tourism, Ganga Yamuna cleaning, innovative fundraising models, asset monetization project, toll, operate, transfer. During his tenure as the Union Minister of Water Resources and Ganga Rejuvenation, the monumental Namami Gange project, which carried out activities like sewage management, biodiversity conservation, afforestation, Ganga Gram, industrial effluent management, water quality monitoring and rural sanitation, led to adequate flow of water, improved efficiency of surface irrigation and increased water use efficiency. Under the project, more than 200 schemes involving sewerage infrastructure, riverfront development, ghat cleaning and biodiversity were undertaken and few were completed before the timeline. In addition to the Transport and Shipping Ministry, Gadkari did a commendable job as an MSME minister. During his tenure, he took a historic decision of redefining MSME. Any enterprise with an investment of 1 crore rupees and turnover of 5 crore rupees is termed as micro-enterprise. The inspirational leader has gone all the way to promote entrepreneurship, helping rural youth to adopt khadi as a means of self-employment. Another feather in his cap is the introduction of online paperless and transparent MSME registration process. His brainchild, Jal Kranti Udhana pattern of water conservation, has won a global award. Jal Kranti, now being implemented in 283 villages, is credited for changing the economy of these villages. Shri Narendra Modi, the Honorable Prime Minister Minister of India is changing India's water conservation and reservoirs landscape through Mission Amrit Sarovar. Under the mission, 75 Amrit Sarovars would be created in every district of India, taking the total number to about 90,000 as on date. Mr. Gadkari envisioned water conservation through the construction of highways. Gadkari believes that such innovative measures would bring down the project cost and help many others. Recently, the SOP issued in August 2022 from Environment Ministry on extraction of earth for linear projects like roads or pipelines has recommended the Amrit Sarovar model. Nitin Gadkari ji has received honorary degree of Doctor of Science from Dr. Savitribai Phule Krishi Vidyapeeth and Punjab Rao Deshmukh Krishi Vidyapeeth in recognition of his admirable contributions. Nitin Gadkari is also driving the initiative of alternative and sustainable construction materials. He has been encouraging the use of modified bitumen made by mixing waste rubber and waste plastic. He is also exploring new technologies like white topping for roads in urban high rainfall areas. Such technologies will reduce the operations and maintenance cost of the road, and commuters will be benefited with all-season good quality roads. Nitin Gadkari is on a mission to connect our mountains through ropeways. Ropeways have emerged as the preferred mode of transportation to provide first and last mile connectivity in hilly areas to help decongest the urban areas. The ropeway of Kedarnath would be one of its kind, which would be developed at 11,755 feet above the sea level. On national highways, 110 tunnels with length of 295 kilometers and total outlay of 2 lakh crore rupees are under different stages of execution. Zojila Tunnel is an engineering marvel and has a huge potential to become Davos of India. First Emergency Landing Facility ELF has been inaugurated on NH 925 at Barmer of Rajasthan. Gadkari ji is introducing flex engines which will run on 100% ethanol, directly providing additional income to farmers and the agricultural sector. To help reduce India's massive crude oil import bill, he is working to strengthen the ecosystem for alternative fuels such as ethanol, methanol and others that can be made from domestically available resources. India's first of its kind CNG-run tractor was his brainchild. It has proved to be farmer-friendly, cost-effective and helpful in reducing air pollution. Gadkari ji has introduced the green hydrogen car, which runs on energy created from hydrogen as part of the ambitious Atmanirbhar Yojana launched by the Government of India. Introduction of the first flex-fuel strong hybrid electric vehicle was made possible by Nitin Gadkari's unwavering commitment. Flexible fuels such as gasoline and or ethanol can be used to power flex-fuel vehicles. These cars can run on fuel that has more than 20% ethanol mix. Flex-fuel strong hybrid electric cars are also electric vehicles, EVs, in addition to operating on a flexible fuel model. The city of Nagpur is the first city to explore alternative biofuels for transport. These include bio-CNG buses and bio-BLNG trucks. The minister has launched several development schemes in the city of his birth. Nagpur became the first city in India to have a multi-layered transportation system, world-class infrastructure and world-class traffic management. The Union Transport Minister has several tourist attractions in mind for the Futala area of the city, such as a high-class floating musical fountain, flower garden. The musical fountain show was the first of its kind in the city. Legendary A.R. Rahman composed the music, while the commentary was by Gulzar. Megastar Amitabh Bachchan and Nana Patekar were also part of the event. These programs aim to develop tourism in the city and also provide higher-paying job opportunities to Nagpur's youth. Another brainchild of this progressive and visionary leader is the Nagpur Broad Gauge Metro. The project, with a network of 4 suburban rail lines, is a regional rapid transit system that proposes to boost up the connectivity of Nagpur with nearby towns and offer a modern and comfortable railway system to commuters. He plans to digitize Pachgaon, a hamlet he adopted under the Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana. In the Vidarbha area, Gadkari has also completed a number of social welfare initiatives. A prime example of women's empowerment among impoverished communities is the Rural Women Self-Help Initiative that was launched under his inspiring guidance. It enables women from the villages to weave carpets out of scrap fabric. To generate long-term local employment, the Union Minister introduced Khadi Prakratik Paint, a paint derived from cow excrement in 2021. The technique aims to increase the usage of cow excrement for making environmentally beneficial products. In addition, the product is supposed to help keep the environment clean and bring in more money for farmers. When all industries were shut during the pandemic, Mr. Gadkari was standing with his countrymen. He conducted webinars and 2,000 plus video conferences during this time. His quick decision-making in procuring oxygen, PPE kits, helped those affected by the deadly virus. He generously donated ambulances to NGOs, helped to set up oxygen plants, factory to make remdesivir injections and injections for mucormycosis. Thus, by showcasing strong leadership and taking quick decisions, he handled COVID situation effectively. Organizing over 1,500 successful heart surgeries is another stupendous achievement of this warm-hearted good doer. Under the Rashtriya Vayoshri Yojana and Assistant to Disabled Person ADIP, we have conducted screening camp for senior citizens and disabled persons respectively. After the screening, 36,000 beneficiaries were distributed 271,000 assistive devices, 29,000 beneficiaries from Nagpur City and 7,000 beneficiaries from Nagpur Rural. His affable nature goes beyond everyday personal equations as he continues to transmit his radiance and ideas to every individual or organization with his unmatched zeal. Gifted with an ability to dream seemingly impossible dreams and get them to fruition also defines this visionary. Nitin Gadkari shines as one of modern India's pioneering leaders, and his work is a template for the coming generations. Nitin Jairam Gadkari will always be known as the infrastructure man of India.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have been told that Honorable Minister Shri Nitin Gadkari ji is kind of held up and he will be joining us in a short while from now. So what we are going to